All right, let's do this, right? Should we do this? Hey now. Good morning and welcome to Wednesday's class. Yesterday, it was very witty and fun looking at Gilbert and Sullivan, the duo that kind of changed opera, musical theater, and just so much fun. We should all go on a field trip when they do a Gilbert and Sullivan show sometime in LA. And then film scoring results are in for the spooky Mulholland Drive, so that'll be fun to show. It's looking really good, so I can't wait to show you that on Friday. Today we're going to kick it real cool. I mean, this guy's tone is just going to make everyone fall in love with jazz, fall in love with each other. This is very romantic music. If you're ever at a loss to what should I put on, we're all kind of romantics. What should I put on to kind of get in the mood of feeling good, feeling romantic, and you know what I'm trying to say. Put this guy's music on, and it'll put anybody in the mood for relaxation and all that other fun. Today we're going to look at the great American tenor saxophonist Lester Young. Lester Young kind of emerged in the 1930s, so we're going to look at his life. Kind of got his fame through the Count Basie Band, but introduced a whole new style of improvising on the tenor saxophone, and he was nicknamed Prez. Billie Holiday gave him that nickname, short for president. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the president at that time. In return, he gave her the nickname Lady Day. Billie Holiday, of course. So we're going to look at his life and listen to, his beautiful sound, airy, breathy sound that sounds nothing like other saxophone players that we've looked at, and we'll take a listen to compare, just so you know I'm not just saying that. Let's get into the lovely sound of Lester Young. Leave Hollywood and let's go to, you want to go to Woodville, Mississippi? I don't, but we need to for this class. This is where he's born. So born in 1909, dies in 1959. We'll talk about his life. He had a hard life with alcohol, but despite that, brilliant soloist. We need our timeline. The last saxophonist we looked at was Cannonball. Cannonball Adderley played the alto saxophone. We talked about all the different types of saxophone. Alto's in the higher register, tenor's in the lower register. So tenor is what this man's instrument is going to be. He played clarinet and all those other things, but we're really focusing on his tenor saxophone, breathy, airy sound. If we look at the 30s is the big band era, right? We did a class on Glenn Miller and Count Basie, and Count Basie is really he joins Count Basie's band, so this is where he's going to get fame through Count Basie. This is before, even though it sounds like cool jazz, this is before cool jazz. So what he's doing is something different. There's big band playing all around, and he's going to be playing in smaller ensembles because, as you can hear, his tone is softer, more intimate, and for big band, loud big band in the mood kind of type songs going on, it's not particularly conducive for that. So he's going to create his own style, like we've talked about with several artists. The other most famous tenor saxophone that we'll get later, in that we've already done a class on, is John Coltrane. He sounds not, and they both, what's their commonality? They both play tenor saxophone, right? Listen to Coltrane. He does not sound anything like Coltrane. Granted, Coltrane, this is 20, 30 years later, so that's also, I just want to show you how it's the same instrument, but how Coltrane is so much different than Lester Young. Most people will probably put on a Lester Young record in the evening after work with a nice glass of wine, rather than a Coltrane record. I mean, I've done Coltrane too, but I mean, all my guests leave early. In the 30s, 40s, this is before Charlie Parker, this is before bebop, but a lot of these guys, Charlie Parker and Miles Davis, that come later, are in the 40s, going to be really influenced by Lester Young's tone and sound. So he kind of grows up in New Orleans, that's kind of where, and worked from the age of 5 to make money for his family. So this is in the 20s. Sold newspapers, shined shoes. By the time he's 10 years old, though, he learned the basics of musical instruments, violin, drums, and trumpet. Joined the family band. His dad taught him and all the rest of the kids music. So when he's 18, he leaves home and moves west to Kansas City and finds the Count Basie Band. We looked at Count Basie. I mean, he was one of the hottest big bands in the world, traveling, and great big band leader. But he stands out in the Count Basie Band because of his sound. It's a reserved sound. It's not a sound that's in your face. It's the audience comes to him, rather, because you're listening to his sensitivity. So, and it's colorful, use of language, and all using music. So in the 30s, he's in Kansas City, playing with Basie, and we should do a separate class on Coleman Hawkins, because he is, and we will, but I do want to talk about him because both of these guys have a very relaxed style of playing. We won't get into technicalities really, but they both have warm, full sounds. They're both playing the tenor saxophone. Some people say Coleman Hawkins has kind of a fast vibrato. Lester Young has a slower vibrato. So, but they're both pretty similar. Let's just take a quick listen to Coleman Hawkins so you can kind of see the similarities. Miles Davis was so influenced, and as we know, Miles was so innovative, but played ballads using the harmon mute many times. And he said, when I heard Coleman Hawkins, Lester Young, he learned how to play ballads from these guys. So it really sometimes doesn't even matter which instrument you play. It's how you play that instrument that's going to be so influential. He teams up with Billie Holiday, and they make a lot of records. He lives with her. They say they weren't romantically involved, but he gave her the name Lady Day, and of course she gave him Prez. So when he leaves Count Basie in 1940, he with Joe Jones, who's a drummer, they go to Los Angeles. They play They still play in the Basie Band here and there. He starts playing with Nat King Cole and a lot of other artists that are popular in the late 40s here. And around the early 50s, around 51, his playing is declining because he has a bad drinking problem. Not that we'll get into, addicts and artists, they seem to go together a lot. And with jazz, we can't deny that there were drugs and alcohol that played such a, and I think that it was so much oppression that these guys had to feel, and the system, that they were all in New York playing, and I think the police and Jim Crow laws and all of these things, they have to have a psychological impact on the artists, and that I'm not excusing their addiction for that, but there's I know he suffered horrible, and along with other jazz musicians, horrible racial things, and that's got to have some influence on your self-worth and all of these things. So it's extremely sad. He married 3 times, and drank heavily for the rest of his life. But he continued to tour and record, and some say his playing was never as strong, but others say his playing actually got even better, with more emotion, perhaps. So on a flight to New York City, he suffers internal bleeding due to alcoholism and died in the early morning in 1959, which is a year that we come back to. So he dies the same year as Miles Davis's huge, iconic Kind of Blue album comes out. So, and he dies at the age of 49, so young, so sad. And his tone is so lyrical, and it's sparse. He's not playing 1,000 notes. I think he's playing by ear a lot and feel a lot, rather than on top of every chord change very quickly, unlike Clifford Brown or Charlie Parker, where they're really improvising on the chords, going at a rapid pace. He can play fast, but he's really establishing his own sound that's so different than just playing fast and rapid passages, which can be exciting, but he doesn't play that game there. He influences a lot Stan Getz, another tenor saxophonist that we'll talk about later, and Zoot Sims, another saxophonist he was so influential. And what are we hearing? We're hearing a lot of heavy vibrato, of course, breathy saxophone. He always would hold it at a tilt, always wore a pork pie hat, spoke in a language that was cool. He would say cool. We say cool still, but this was really, he was very hip with his vernacular. Lyrical. He also plays in the higher register of the saxophone. Very relaxed style. It's really hard. At least I think, even if you don't like jazz, it's very hard not to be seduced by his playing. It's just his sensitivity and his taste and his lyrical playing. It's just, you could listen to this. He's floating. Doesn't it sound like he's floating over these? It's sounding so easy. It makes it sound so easy and so seductive, and just his rhythm and how he's floating using these rhythms and the right notes. It's just, you can't really learn this thing. It comes from his heart, and you can tell that he's playing so much from his heart. So despite the hard life that he had, he was just a genius, really, on the saxophone, and influenced so many people. And to kind of play this way in the late 30s, 40s, people were like, I think they all stopped and said, we just need to stop and listen to this guy, because he is so lyrical, so melodic, and I think that's why we still talk about him today. He wasn't avant-garde. He wasn't playing like Coltrane, like Charlie Parker. They were influenced by him tremendously, but I just thought we'd spend a little time with Lester Young, the president. And so I hope you enjoyed this. I've been wanting to get to this guy for a long time. So that's the beautiful, beautiful music of Lester Young. Okay, tomorrow we'll be leaving Mississippi, going back to, you guessed it, LA, and it should be Bonnerific. We'll see. Okay, love you, miss you, and that's all I got. So see you tomorrow.